So last week, we talked about the gross abuse of power in the Texas House. And I just kind of want to piggyback off of that because I was just reading some headlines the other day and I was like, holy crap, it is so hard to believe that we just recently passed the 1-year anniversary of one of the most momentous occasions in the Texas legislature, which is, of course, the acquittal and vindication of our state's Attorney General, Ken Paxton. Now, I talked about the impeachment scandal at great lengths as it was going on. I tried to cover it as much as I could, even on my national platform, because the national implications that would have had, should it been successful, would have been tremendous. And I seriously consider that. The entire process, the rushed process, the secrecy, everything that the Texas House engaged in this particular issue was one of the greatest betrayals in Texas history.
We're Americans. They betrayed their country.
Because essentially it was, of course, the Texas House's betrayal of the Texas voter. I mean, they tried to override the will of the people that we had just spoken by way of our ballots, like months previously. It was just mere months previously. And they were like, no, you know what? We don't care, right? We the people voted for Ken Paxton as our choice, the people's choice for AG. And the Texas House said, no, actually, we wanted the Bush candidate. And we don't like it that the true conservatives won out. And so we're just going to do whatever we can by hook or by crook to get this guy out anyway. Screw you, Texas voter. I mean, that's essentially what they told us, right? And I know I talk about this issue a lot, and some of you may be thinking, Sarah, okay, you just mentioned it's been over a year now that this has happened. It's time to move on. See, here's the thing. I personally would love to move on, okay? I would love to move on from that ordeal, knowing that the Speaker of the House in Texas, drunk Dade Phelan, and all of his impeachment bros have actually learned something, okay? That they've come to terms with their poor decisions and realized what a sham it was, what an abuse of power it was. They realized that they can't mess with Texas voters ever again, right? Just some sort of lesson that they've learned that they would do differently this time, next time, that they've held themselves accountable in any way, shape, or form. But the problem is they have done exactly the opposite. See, 2 days, I'm telling you this because it's been a year now, okay? And it still hasn't happened. But 2 days after the acquittal of Ken Paxton, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, here in the state of Texas, sent a letter to the state auditor's office requesting a special audit to determine how much of our taxpayer money was wasted on this sham. You don't think about it, right? You don't think about, oh, resources were utilized, lodging was utilized. Do you think that those attorneys that they used, that they talked about all that, oh, we've got the greatest attorneys of all time on the Texas House's side. Ken Paxton doesn't stand a chance. Well, Ken Paxton was forced to use his own money to pay for his legal representation. The Texas House actually used your money to pay for those infamous attorneys. They used your money for all of that. So, yeah. Has it been over a year? Yeah. Is it time to move on? Yeah. But not until we have a proper accounting of however much of your money and my money they wasted in this total impeachment sham, and it didn't have to be this way, okay? So Dan Patrick sent that letter 2 days after the acquittal. Let me read you a little bit of it, all right? He says, to be clear, the goal is to determine the absolute total cost to the state of preparing and conducting this trial from the beginning through its conclusion. This must detail all expenses, including but not limited to investigators' expenses, document production and assembly. There was a ton of documents, attorney expenses, witness fees, travel, food, and lodging. This list is illustrative, not exhaustive. So there may be more that I haven't listed, still need to see it. Please determine and report on all expenses. If there are invoices outstanding, we seek to know when they are and when they will be received. Now, I would say that's a very reasonable request. That's called being a responsible steward of our money. Thank you, Dan Patrick, apparently one of the only guys left in state government who really gets it. This isn't y'all's play money, okay? This isn't Monopoly money. This isn't money for you to just play around with to enact revenge on your political opposition, which, by the way, you may be thinking, but the Speaker of the House is a Republican and Ken Paxton is a Republican. What do you mean political opposition, Sarah? Well, here in Texas, we're so dysfunctional that it doesn't necessarily mean the term political opposition doesn't always mean here in the state of Texas that it's a member of a different party, because we have way too many establishment Republicans who hate members of their own party simply for being too conservative. They would rather do deals with the Democrats behind closed doors than band together with members of their own party because they're too conservative. And that's icky. Okay, so they're using our money, like play money, to enact revenge on their political opposition, fellow conservatives. How disgusting is that? Okay, and to that point, by the way, before we get into Dade Phelan's cowardice, to that point, Dan Patrick, obviously as the lieutenant governor, oversees the Texas Senate. Well, the Texas Senate had absolutely no problem turning over their expenses, and it was to the tune of $435,000, almost $500,000 that the Senate spent. Now, their expenses were far less just from the process, right? They were simply reviewing what the Texas House had already passed to them. To their credit, they really had no choice in the matter. Their hands were tied. They couldn't say, no, we aren't even participating in this. We aren't even going to convene. The Texas House tied their hands. They dumped this steaming pile of manure into the Texas Senate's lap and said, here, act. And so the Texas Senate spent the money. Didn't have to be that way. Not their fault. But here, over a year later, Dade Phelan has stonewalled that audit. He refuses to admit how much of our money, my money, your money, do you work hard for your money? I do. I'm sure you do too. Do you want to know where in the world the government is spending your money?
Where's my money?
At all levels, by the way. I want to know how the federal government is spending my money and wasting my money. I want to know how the state is spending my money and wasting my money. I want to know how my local government, how are they spending my money? What kind of pet project bonds do they want to impose on us? Right? By the way, remember, just because it's my personal pet peeve, a bond in anything that you vote for, a bond, if you want to approve a bond, you are just voting to spend more of your money on something. So just remember that.